Sarah. Okay, so there isn't getting into the first pose. So we're just going to launch straight into this tonight because I think the nature of it is very, very restorative, and it's for this practice tonight, and it is being recorded. So if you are a subscriber, you'll get a video copy of this at the end of the week. Hi, Sarah. And so you can go back to this, because I thought about putting this practice together because it's just been one of those weeks, you know, where I just feel more and more tired. Even though I'm practicing loads and loads of yoga, I've been doing the workouts in the morning and things like that, but I think I'm just tired. So tonight's practice is going to be very nourishing in that respect. So have your bits and bobs to hand. I've got the bricks nearby in case I want to use those. You would substitute a couple of books or a rolled up towel or blanket. I've got my blanket over here, I've got a cushion I can reach, I've got my strap, I've got my eye pillow, okay? So all of these things are going to be super good. And then I would probably, if you jutted your mat up against the wall as I have done, so lengthwise, I'd probably have the blanket to hand to rest your head on, because your head in the moment is going to be on the floor. But if you've gone long ways, it's fine. Okay, so we're using a bit of the wall. And what we're going to do to come into the first pose is like Viparita Karani. So you're going to bring your body, your hip, right up against the wall. And this is the only elegant way to come into this, because as you come into the pose, you're going to lie down and take your feet up. And it's quite nice. But that's what I want you to do initially, because then we're going to turn this into a wall butterfly. Okay, so because it's butterfly or reclining butterfly, remember, those of you that are not using a wall, and it's fine not to, butterfly is with the soles of the feet together, the knees opened out wide, and either you lying down flat or putting something underneath you to create a little bit of an arch in your lower back. For those of you that are doing wall butterfly, maybe use your blanket to support the back of the head and roll it up into the back of the neck. And then you're going to bring the soles of your feet together and as low down the wall as you can, with your knees opening out wide. Now initially, when you come into this, you could put your hands onto the inside of the thighs or the knees and just gently push the knees in the direction of the wall, but not too strong and not too forceful. I would also suggest that any of these poses tonight, you try to keep your sacrum on the floor. The sacrum is the bony structure at the very bottom of the spine, across the back of the hips. So we're into a wall butterfly, hands out by the sides initially. I'm going to give you a little cue for the hands in just a sec, but maybe put your eye pillow on if you've got one to use, and maybe cover your eyes with something. Your dressing gown belt or yoga strap is a brilliant substitution for an eye pillow when you're not using it for its strap purposes. Okay, so yeah, elegantly. Hi Anne, welcome. We're using the wall tonight, Anne, so you could use your wardrobe quite nicely. And we're coming, the first pose is butterfly, but wall butterfly. So we've done butterfly with the soles of the feet together and the knees opened out wide. But for this one, it's like legs up in the air, like a bamboo garden, which I know is a favourite. And you can either lie like this with your legs up your wardrobe, or you could bring the soles of your feet together and the knees wide into a wall butterfly. Okay, so that's our first position for this evening. So I'll give everybody a little bit of time, and just, you know, if you need me, just wave at me. I've got, yeah, I just think it's really nice when you are reclining in this way to get yourself low down to the floor and then just shut off as many of the other senses as possible. So what do I mean by that? Number one, you've got to close your eyes. Even better if you've got something that you can cover your eyes with, because that little bit of heaviness over the eyelids can be very, very restful. Number two is and it's probably a consideration from before you got into the pose, but number two has to be to stay warm. Okay, so if you are barefoot, for example, and you think, oh, my feet are going to get cold, or you've got your shoulders uncovered or something, do be aware that lying on the floor for extended periods of time potentially is going to create some cold, some chill, and we don't want that sensation. We want to stay nice and cozy and warm, and we're in that lovely transition, aren't we, from winter through spring into summer, and it's quite warm during the day, but it gets quite chilly quite quickly at night because the planet hasn't, or the country hasn't warmed up, the air temperature hasn't warmed up yet. So bear all of those factors in mind, and just allow yourself to sink and to settle. Now, Carla, what you might like to do with the position you're in, sorry to disturb you, is to hold your feet, because I know you quite like to do, yeah, and then let your knees butterfly out wider. How does that feel? Obviously, if you try any of these things, and these suggestions are open to everybody, but if you try them and you think, nah, I don't like that, or it's not as restful, we are going to transition into happy baby pose eventually, because why wouldn't we? We're in this position and we're going to start playing with the legs in a little while. But initially, it's just to get ourselves settled. So I'd like you, now that we're pretty much all there, I think we're all pretty good to go. Excellent. So I'd like you to take a nice big breath in, and either sigh the breath out, the big, or you can do another one of my favorites, which is the blubber lips. So you could breathe out and okay, and feel free to incorporate these noisy exhalations at any stage in tonight's class, because you're on your own, you're in your own space, and you're not going to offend anybody, you're not going to wake anybody up or disturb their meditation that's happening next door. So why not make a bit of sound? Sound is so wonderfully restorative, it just releases so many tensions, and the vibrational quality of the sound, especially with the blubbery lips or a chant of om or a big ah sound, the vibration of the sound is very soothing, and because it moves through all the watery substance of our body. And when we think about it, because our bodies are made up so much of water, this vibration's like a little bit of a massage that weaves its way through ourselves. So you look at people that sing, singers, it's really hard to sing and to be unhappy. So you look at people that sing, they always say that about children, don't they? That children that sing are happy children. Okay. So now I'm going to take you through these poses tonight, and it gives you a little bit of a repertoire. So another good tip is to write as many of them down afterwards as possible. I know that most of us are going to meet each other again on Sunday afternoon, and we'll revisit our yin practice on Sunday. But if you want yin in between, obviously there's loads of people online offering all these different practices. But if you resonate with any of the things that we've done tonight, and you think, yeah, just doing maybe one or two or even three of those, write down as many as you can remember, and then just incorporate it into a bit of a nighttime routine tomorrow, the end of the week. Okay. So to finish our last kind of minute or so of being in this pose, I'd like you to take one hand to your energetic heart center, so in the middle of your chest, and the other hand to your tummy, maybe just round about where your navel, just below where your navel is. And we're just going to focus on the breathing for the next few moments. So I'd like you to breathe into the hand holding your tummy. And as you breathe in, the tummy gently expands. And as you breathe out, the tummy gently contracts. Do this again, breathing in and out. And then when you're ready next to breathe in, so going at entirely your own pace, I want you to breathe into the hand holding your heart center. Breathing in, breathe it out. And again, breathing in and out. Now link the two by breathing into both areas at the same time. So breathe in, tummy expands, heart widens. Breathe out from the heart, breathe out from the belly. Keep going, breathe in and out. Lovely. Just one or two more of these. Incorporate a bit of sound on your exhalation, or you can sigh the breath out. Just feel all of your worries, all of your tirednesses, just everything that's weighing you down, that's making your shoulders feel heavy or your back ache. Just let it all sink into the ground. Let the earth swallow it up so that she can transform it into an energy that's needed somewhere else. But you don't need it. You don't need to hold on to it. Okay. Then after this exhalation, releasing your hands. And we're not going to change our position too much, but we are going to slide a tiny bit away from the wall to come into a wall squat. So you might find that you don't need to move a lot, maybe just an inch, okay? You're still lying on your back. And I'd like you to open your knees into a sort of a V-shaped position, but place the soles of your feet on the wall. Now, if you can keep the ankles in the same line as the knees, so the same height as the knees, then great. But if you need the feet a little bit higher up the wall, that's okay. And if they are higher up the wall, just encourage the knees to move a little bit down. So you're kind of coming into the start of a straddle pose. So this is just for the people who find it challenging to have the feet lower down. Now, obviously, you're not bringing them right down to the skirting board, but just low enough so that you have got a little bit of something going on around the hips. Something nice, okay, something juicy. Those of you that are not using the wall, you can still replicate this exact position that I'm in now, only you will hold onto the shins just below the knees and just hold the legs in that position instead, okay? Now, obviously, you could substitute a wall with a sofa here or something else, because you've got your feet lower down now, which might be just the height of a seat of a chair. So you could put your soles of your feet on something like that. I know that means maybe a little bit of shuffling around for some of you. But do make sure that you've got your knees fairly open. Those that have got more mobility in the hips, maybe take the feet just a tiny bit wider. Okay, you're looking, it's a bit like the frog pose, okay, that if you were in last week's class, last week's yin practice, we knelt with the knees nice and wide apart, we turned the toes out, and we got this big sensation, this big stretch in this zone of the body. And we're basically doing exactly the same thing, only we're using the wall to help us here and just to hold us in this space that we are in. Okay, so make sure that there is no unwanted sensation in your knees. If your knees start to get grumpy, bring the feet maybe a little bit closer together. Don't be so strenuous on the body. Arms can go out to the sides now at about shoulder height. I think that's quite nice when we're practicing this pose, unless of course you're holding on to your knees. Close your eyes and breathe. And we're going to count the breath for this pose. So we're going to be counting a slow count of 4 for the inhalations and the exhalations. So I'd like you you can count your own breath, but just to give you an idea, it's on 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you breathe out for 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's a rhythm to it. There's a consistency, and the breath is coming in on the count of 4 and going out on the count of 4. So we have that Samavriti pranayama again, and I've been referring back to this kind of consistently over the last few weeks, because it is these practices, these breath-led practices, that are going to keep us grounded and going to keep us feeling steady, okay? And they have this wonderful calming and centering effect. So just keep going with your count. 1, 2, 3, 4, and out for 2, 3, 4. Lovely. And this should feel really quite steady and quite soothing. Now, if at any time your mind wanders and you forget to count or you don't stay focused on it, please don't worry. Just take your attention back to the breath once you've noticed, and resume where you left off. It is the nature of the mind to be full of thoughts. This is what we do. There's absolutely no point in getting cross with ourselves or upset with ourselves if we found ourselves being absorbed by some stories. It is our nature. And as we practice, as we get more competitive with focusing the mind and watching the distractions, they come and go. We can be a little bit more observant of it rather than getting involved. Okay. So maybe just taking 2 or 3 more breaths, still counting the breath. And then just to realign the pelvis and to rebalance. We're not going to move anything other than the legs. You're just maybe going to straighten them up and bring the heels up the wall for a moment or two, just to give the knees and the hips a little bit of respite. Okay. So one of the hardest things to do once you might have shuffled away from the wall is to get yourself back to the wall. So if that's happened to you, just see if you can get yourself, just wiggle yourself so that your bottom comes a little bit closer to the wall if you can. Our next pose is going to be a wall straddle, and I quite like having my sit bones right against the wall for this, and therefore the back of the legs quite lengthened along the wall. You might not need to or want to do that. So if you want to keep your bottom away from the wall or the backs of the legs away from the wall, please do. And if you need to keep a little bit of a bend in the knees, that's okay as well. A straddle is a V shape. Okay, so I want you to let the legs come out as wide as they can. Now I've got my 2 bricks, and they're quite nice to just wedge, whether you have them on their edges or on their sides. That's quite nice to have just something there. So a couple of cushions would substitute for the bricks. I hope you can see that in the shot. And the other option, if you've got a super long strap, is just to loop the strap. So this is for those of you that maybe don't have a wall or are not using a wall. You could instead just loop a strap around your feet and just hang out with your feet in the air for a little bit longer, with the ankles or the feet being cradled by a strap. And that's quite nice. That's quite nice actually, even if you are using the wall. But for those that want to go a little bit deeper, or maybe your strap or your dressing gown is not quite long enough to allow for a full extension through the legs, and then you're again just hanging out here. So maybe a bit more intense stretch into the inner thighs, maybe working with this external rotation in the hips is something that you are maybe just being a little bit kinder to yourself for. But it is quite nice. So if for those of you that aren't using a wall and aren't using a strap, then you could just use put your elbows on the floor and your hands underneath the edges of the thighs, and just kind of cradle the edges of the thighs in the pose, so that you might just feel a little bit less strenuous. Of course, if you feel that you need to come out of these poses at any stage, please just take yourself out, roll to one side, or just bring the legs closer together. Do whatever it is that you need to do. And then we're going to go back to that lovely even breaths in and out again. This time, however, you could adopt the count of counting for 4 in and out, but this time another suggestion, something I quite like doing, it helps to focus and keep my mind on concentrated, is to say this: I am breathing in. I am breathing out. And you can go with this now. For the next, we're going to be in this pose maybe for another 2 minutes, 3 minutes maximum. So if you want to come out sooner, you can. But just see if you can, for the next maybe 20 breaths or so, just stick with these little mantras. I am breathing in. I am breathing out. Okay, take about 6 more breaths, please. Okay. So, what I'd suggest that we do is if you just hold the edges of the thighs and gently bring the legs a little bit closer together and maybe hug the knees in towards your chest. Okay. So we've done quite a lot with extending the legs. Now we're going to do a little bit of work with the knees bent. We're going to come into part 1 of 2 poses. So we're going to do one after the other. It's a bit like where you do pretzel. I call it pretzel pose. I know a lot of people call it eye of the needle. So this one you might need to be a little bit further away from the wall, not so close. If you're not sure, just take a look at the screen now. So you're going to maybe leave one leg up the wall and cross the other leg over the top, just like we would do when we're doing a glute stretch in class. And it might be that that's where you want to stay, and you keep asking this bent knee to move in the direction of the wall, and you might keep the ankle flexed. Those that want to take it further can bend the straight leg and bring the sole of the foot onto the wall. And just simply by doing that, you've got your eye of the needle pose, because normally we would thread our hands, wrap them around either the straight leg or bent leg, and just draw the knee closer in. But we're doing that. So obviously you can still do that if you're not using the wall. You can substitute instead of having your foot on the wall, you're going to hold on to, in my case, it's my left leg, and just really bring the left knee closer in towards me so that I get my stretch onto the outer right thigh. But for those of you that are using the wall, you're going to hang around like this, and it's just quite a nice stretch, just as it is. And we're going to be here for maybe 3 minutes. Okay, so get yourself settled, get yourself comfy, wave at me if you need a hand. Okay, so as long as you've got some sensation in the outer right thigh, then you know you're in the right kind of vicinity. What do you want to do with your hands? I would take them out wide to the side again, or you could take them alongside the ears this time, or maybe loosely wrap them around the top of your head. Close the eyes again and just let yourself be, let yourself settle and breathe. Now, for this one, I like to send the breath, because I find this one more of a challenge. I like these stretches. My hips and glutes really like these stretches. I carry a lot of tightness here. So I would personally direct my breath into those areas that are feeling tight. Fill up the space, fill it up with the breath, create space with the breath. And then as you breathe out, let your body become a little bit softer. Let your body surrender and relax into the pose, and just see whether with the power of your breath, whether you can allow or give your body permission to just sink and to settle into the pose. If it creates any tingling, any pins and needles anywhere in your body, then you must either adjust. Maybe that could be that your bent leg becomes straight up the wall again and it becomes a little bit less intense, or you just come out of the pose altogether. So maybe just 3 more breaths here, please. Okay, so we're not going to change our leg position too much. However, you do need to listen to these cues. So I have got my right leg crossed over the front of my left thigh, which for those of you that I can see your legs, most of you have done that, which means that you are going to roll to your left. If you've crossed your left leg over the front of your right thigh, you're going to roll to the right. I'd move your arms out of the way, and if you're not sure what to do, just take a look like that at the screen now. I'm simply going to roll my hips to the floor, but I'm going to leave my left foot on the wall and just let it slide down. And I'm going to bring my right foot down to the wall, and it might be that I just stay here, which might feel a little bit precarious, so maybe put something underneath the right knee if necessary. Or what you're going to work towards eventually is bringing the right knee to the floor and the left foot down to the skirting board or the edge of the wall. So I don't know how well you can see that in the screen, but it is quite a nice stretched out feel. Okay, so it's basically a lying twist with the right leg over the top of the left leg if you've gone that way. So we do this fairly often in class, it will be familiar, but as long as you're lying down and you've got your knees over towards one side, it doesn't matter whether you're using the wall. The wall is quite nice here. I've got the sole of my right foot on the skirting board and the top of my left foot also on the skirting board. There might be a couple of you, I don't know, who want something a little bit more, and if that applies to you, then you can straighten your right leg and hold on to it with your left hand. Okay, so that's just if you want a little bit more of an intense stretch and you've got the space to be able to roll that leg out straight. There's another option, there is a third option where you slide a little bit further away from the wall and you also straighten your left leg in the opposite direction to where your right leg has gone. But I think we'll just stick with this one for now. So remember, you can have the sole of your right foot on the floor with your knee pointing up towards the ceiling, or you can lay the knee downwards, maybe use your left hand kind of anchor to weigh it down if you need to. All right. Try and have your gaze or your face pointing up towards the ceiling, or even turning in the opposite direction to your knees. Again, if this is too strong, just have it facing the same way as the rest of your knees. And this might be quite a nice release. Again, we get a lot of tightness, we carry it. We talked about this at the last yin practice, where we got quite deep and juicy into the hips. And it is really nice to release the hips. We release a lot of our tension, our irritability when we get deep into these leg muscles. And the wonderful thing about our situation is that the majority of you have got walls to play around with, and walls aren't just for going upside down or for using to help you balance. They can also be used for yin practice so successfully. Okay. So I can imagine that for some of you this is delightful, and you could quite happily stay here for extra time, and this might be one of the ones that you jot down, you make a note of, so that when you come to getting a little half an hour to yourself, maybe you take 2 or 3 of these, and you could luxuriate in spending maybe 10 minutes on each side. Doesn't take a lot, but just to lie down and maybe experiment with one or two poses just does wonderful. Just it is so restorative. Okay, so let's think about bringing ourselves back to the center. You could sweep both feet up in the air again, why not? Stretch both legs up towards the ceiling. Often in class we talk about how these poses are wonderful if you've had a day of being on your feet or of running around, and often on a physical level that's absolutely appropriate, but maybe life isn't so busy running around from place to place. But nevertheless, it's the mind that benefits just from this lying and this stillness and this softer practice. Okay, so let's do the other side. So we're going to do threading the needle. So for me, I'm going to leave my right leg straight up the wall and cross my left leg over the front of my right thigh. And that will just allow me to either stay here, or you could bend the right knee, bringing the sole of the foot onto the wall and bringing the foot down as low as you want. You might need to move a little bit away from the wall just to create a little bit more room here. You don't have to use the wall at all. You could just be freely on your mat and threading your arms around your leg and using your arms to draw your leg in towards your chest. But the wall just takes that little extra bit of effort away. And obviously the lower down you bring your foot, the more of a stretch into the glutes. And we want to get deep into the connective tissue that weaves itself around the hips, because due to the nature of the forces, the sheer pounds per square inch of pressure that goes through the hip complex, means that the connective tissue is super, super strong, and in places is very, very dense. We often talk about the iliotibial band, this band of connective tissue that runs from the outer hip down towards the knee. And you'll see lots of people with foam rollers trying to roll out some of the tension in this line of connective tissue. And I think what I'd point out is that connective tissue gets denser and forms thicker bands, if you like, or it just gets thicker naturally. The more forces are put through it, the more pressure, the more weight bearing, the more it's in use. And so obviously it's going to carry tension, it's going to be tight there, but to remove that tightness would put that area at disservice. It's tight there for a reason, and we can relax it a little bit. We can give it a bit of a break, which is what you're doing now, but we don't want to lose the integrity of these connective tissues that are here either. And so while you are in these yin poses, you are putting forces, a different type of force. And because it is prolonged for 2 to 3 minutes at the minimum, you are then starting to stretch connective tissues that don't stretch, that don't normally stretch. It's muscles that stretch, not connective tissue. It's a totally different chemical makeup within the body. Just take another couple of breaths in and out here. All right, so for those of you with left legs crossed over right thighs, you're going to roll your legs over to the right if you've got space. If you haven't got space, just come more into the center of your room and just lie in a reclining twist. Go the other way if your legs are crossed in the other direction. And I like to have yeah, that's it. So I like to straighten the top leg, but that is your choice, your preference. It's quite nice also just to lie with the knee bent and a little bit of weight, a hand on the top of the knee just to anchor it down. If you're still carrying some tightness or it still feels like you're gripping in your body, then do the same thing on this side. Breathe in and direct your breathing to the areas of your body that need freeing up. As you breathe out, release the tightness, release the tension. Tell yourself to let go. Okay. So we're going to think about gently unwinding, coming back to the center. And maybe just hugging the knees in or stretching the legs up the wall, up towards the ceiling again. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of yogi's choice here before we move into our penultimate posture. So I'm going to let you choose what you do. You could just stay with your legs up the wall, Repeater Karani style. You could put something underneath your hips, like your bolster, rolled up blanket, block, whatever you have to hand, and just hang out with your legs up the wall. And this is great because it realigns the pelvis. Some of you might like to come into a wall stand. So this is a little bit more energetic, but we've been very sedentary for the last portion of the class. So you could bring the soles of the feet onto the wall and lift up into a kind of supported shoulder stand. Obviously, if you're not using a wall, take a shoulder stand if you want to. It's optional, or just stay with your legs up the air. It's quite nice just to come into a mini shoulder stand. It could be something to play around with. Some of you, another option could be to take the feet all the way over and come into halasana. We sometimes call this snail in yin yoga, when you curl your body into an inversion. Not always everybody's cup of tea. Just take care with any neck issues, any shoulder issues. We've done quite a lot of work with the shoulders recently, and so yeah, so just take it easy, or just have legs up in the air, which is mostly a welcome pose. Most people seem to enjoy this one. There's never any complaints anyway when I invite people to come into this one in class. So you're going to spend maybe 2 or 3 minutes here now. So just switch off, relax, find a position that you can sustain, that you can be comfortable in for that period of time. There's something quite wonderful about, I can't see very many of you, I can't see your heads or your bodies, but I can see lots of legs and feet in the air. So if nothing else, that's put a tremendous big smile on my face, because it just looks awesome. Thank you. Got a little wave. I've got all there's wavy feet and wavy hands. So in class, my teacher Simon Lowe, who I did my initial teacher training with, he calls this pose bamboo garden, because, and you can only imagine it, but when you're in a class and you've got 30 people all with their legs up in the air, it's all like sticks of bamboo. And it's so wonderful to walk amongst your bamboo garden. Okay, so last minute to have a little play. If you want to try something else, if you want to do a different variation, spend this time just having that last little bit of a play. Very nice. Good job. And then I'd like you to just gently bring the legs closer together. Bring them straight up and then hug them in. And you may now like to just slide yourself away from the wall and lie flat. Because, as they say, all good things need to come to an end, and you can have too much of a good thing. However, we're not quite finished with the wall. You can move away from it though, that's okay. So if you have moved away from it, don't worry. I'm going to be like, what? Okay, so I'd like you to roll over and just lie on your front maybe, or lie on your back, whatever feels good. We're going to just stay and just recalibrate for a few breaths. It's quite nice, isn't it, to lie out flat. And what my intention is that you feel very much restored. And when we feel restored, we get our energy back. Not too much, however, so that we are too zingy and don't get ourselves off to sleep. But just to promote that just a tiny bit further, we are going to end tonight's practice with a back bend before we come to a seated finish. You can use the wall or not. We're going to come into Sphinx or Seal, and the wall can be used here. So I'm going to keep the bolster to hand because it's quite nice to have it propped underneath you. Not necessarily for your arms to go on, but for your tummy to rest on. So be mindful if you've eaten recently. And what you're going to do is I'm going to come to the sides. I'm going to use my filing cabinet here. And I want you to, if you can, to bring your knees to the skirting board or to the wall so that the feet go up the wall like this. Okay. And then you can either, I quite like this to kind of go on, okay? So you could do this and just kind of like you're sunbathing. Imagine you've got a book there to read. I mean, how nice would that be? Maybe you could think about that for this weekend. Or you can bring the bolster closer. So if you want a bigger back bend, bring the bolster up underneath the ribs, and then the forearms can go onto the floor like a traditional Sphinx. In a normal yoga class, this is King Cobra. Okay, so when the knees are bent and the feet are up in the air, it's variations of King Cobra. Those of you that want a deeper back bend can come up. If you, I've got the wall too close to me, but you could come up with straight arms into a seal, bring the hands closer in towards you, for instance. If it was my daughter, my youngest, who was in here with me, she'd have her hands on the floor and she'd have her head on her feet. She can bring the two of them together. I've got a bit more practice to do before I get there. But nevertheless, in this position, what's quite nice is to have the elbows bent and rest the chin into the hands. So you can close the eyes. I quite also like, with my palms open, I like to rest my head in the hands like this. So I've still got this back bend happening. I've still got a mild stretch for the front of the hips, which might be quite welcome after all the wall-based and the flexion for the hips that we've done tonight. So this is a kind of a nice counterpose to everything that we have done. But just hanging out here, closing the eyes, maybe putting the palms of the hands over the eyes, making sure that the palms are nice and warm, and just soothing the eyes and soothing all the tiny muscles around the eye sockets. And if you find that being with the knees bent becomes too intense for your lower back, just practice this Sphinx in a traditional legs out straight. So just use the length of your mat. Okay. Just taking another breath or two. And then sometimes it's quite nice just to shuffle out. If you've got support underneath you, just wiggle it out and away. And just come to lie down, maybe making a pillow with your palms for your forehead to rest on. And either coming out so that you can straighten the legs, or if you can, keep the knees bent just for a moment or two longer and just rock the feet from side to side a little. Just create a little bit of freedom across your low back. Not too big a movement here, keep it really gentle. All right. And then what we'll do is we'll pick ourselves up, bring the knees away from the wall, and just come onto all fours and let the chin fall towards the chest, let the tailbone point towards the back of the knees, and spread the shoulders apart, lift the belly, lift the navel, and just realign and release the spine. Good job. Okay, so then when you're ready, we're going to come up to sit. And we're just going to finish tonight's practice with a short seated meditation so that you can leave feeling refreshed and restored, ready for the last part of the day. So just come up to sit comfortably. I don't mind whether it's cross-legged, I don't mind whether the legs are out straight. Use the wall to rest your back against if that is comfortable for you. And place your hands in your lap somewhere. So you could take a chin mudra, so thumb and index fingers touch, hands onto the back of the knees, or you could rest the hands one on top of the other in the center of your lap. Just get really comfortable, nice and easy seat, wherever you've adapted. Close your eyes and think about your sitting bones, whatever it is that you're sitting on, whether it's a bolster or the floor or a cushion. Just make sure that your seat is balanced and that you can rest evenly in your sit bones. From the base of your spine, which in this case is your sit bones, I want you to feel that you are just gently growing away from the earth. So you're grounded, you're settled, you're balanced, but there is space in your body. Space in your spine, and your spine is able to move as you breathe. Take a nice big breath in and out. And just feel the spine changing shape with each inhalation and exhalation. Let the shoulders drop away from your ears. Move the chin a tiny bit closer into the face. Feel the eyelids lightly closed and your gaze is soft behind your eyelids. Now be aware of your breath once again. I'm going to breathe in and out through your nose. Maybe taking a soft ujjayi breath if you are familiar with that practice. As you breathe in now, travel your awareness with your breath and imagine that you're breathing your inhalation into the top of your head, into your brain, into that nice kind of soft, spongy substance that's up there. The Chinese call the brain the marrow, same as what's in the bones. So I'd like you to keep breathing in and following your inhalation up into the center of your skull, high up where your brain sits. And then on the next inhalation, so you filled up your brain, you filled up your skull with this prana of your breath. I'd like you to transform it into a white light. And as you breathe out, let that white light kind of trickle or rain down through the rest of your spine, through the rest of your body, a bit like you created this lovely energetic shower. This little energetic shower of your breath. So keep breathing in, and the awareness travels into the mind, and breathe that out. Let this shower of white light cleanse and clear and take away any residual areas of tightness or tension. Take away any worries or doubts, and leave in its space a sense of vitality, a sense of feeling hopeful, a sense of there being no dark spaces, only light. And keep going with this awareness for the next minute. Before we come out of the meditation, spend these next few breaths fully allowing the jaw to release, shoulders to sink, you to feel connected to the earth, but light and spacious within your body. And then after this exhalation, I'd like you to bring your hands together in front of your heart center and let your head bow forwards, your chin coming towards your chest. To spend 1 or 2 more breaths savoring whatever lovely feelings or sensation in your body you may be experiencing. Okay. And then on your next inhalation, just gently lifting your head and opening your eyes. Bring your palms up and we'll share Namaste. Well done. So I wish you all a very lovely, pleasant rest of the evening and a super good night's sleep. And I look forward to seeing you maybe on the weekend, maybe on Saturday morning at 10, maybe on Sunday morning at 10 for the free